Hi everybody, Laura Learns here. Today I'm going to be following along in this book, How to Paint It by Sharon Stevens. I put it on hold at my local library and got it the other day. Inside, it takes me through a couple of basic exercises. Watercoloring is brand new to me. I played around with it last week in my Rooted in Growth project, my little one-year reflection that I'm doing with my friend Linda. And I didn't know what I was doing, and so I got intrigued and thought I should do a little learning. She uses Winsor & Newton Professional Range, and she's going to be using this palette throughout the book. So there's my first mistake, is I don't have this palette, and I'm not sure I have even close to this palette with the beginner watercolor set that I got at Christmas. However, I'm still going to attempt to go through the basics of the exercises. So she starts, well, I should show you first. So everything she does, she's got a 6-step process, I believe. And you start with a sketch, and then she just walks you through all the basic steps that you need. And she shows you which colors you need to use and all of those sorts of things. There's even, I believe, a QR code at the beginning of the book that shows you the sketches so you can download them if you want to. What I want to focus on today is the little activities that she has put. So first, she's done sort of like the darkest to lightest by adding more water to your mix. So I want to do that. She's done where you paint a square of clear water and then you add gray just to the edges of it. And then she's done where you do yellow ochre and then you add burnt umber to the edges of it. So this is, I guess, in my head I would call this shading, but I don't know if that's what it is. It doesn't really say right there. And then here it starts talking about wet on wet or wet on dry and how those are going to work. So I just want to play a little bit and see how the watercolor works. If you have never watercolored, then you may also find this interesting. I'm just going to spare you all the chatting that I was doing while I was experimenting, but really that's all I'm doing here is experimenting. I'm trying to figure out how dark colors will be if I add water, if I use dry paper, if I use wet paper. I'm using an example from the book where it's showing me to kind of test out using one color from darkest to lightest. Then I play around with those same colors. I try to pick up some of the color off of it using a wet brush, using a dry brush, and see what works the best. Really, I have to say experimenting is the way to go. I start adding some green just to see how the colors blend into each other. In another sample that I'd seen, they were using circles, again, wet circles and dry circles so that I can sort of see how colors bleed. Wanted to see how much I could wipe off on my own with just paper towel to get an idea. You can see the paints I'm using are pretty wet in some spots, and then in other spots I'm using more dry. These blue circles are dry, so they don't bleed the same way I've discovered, whereas the green one up top there is wet, and you can see it pours into the other one, which has been kind of fun for me to watch. I have to say the wet on wet is really fun, but you don't really have as much control of it. Whereas if you take the wet on dry, like this one here, I really liked what you could do with that, and it just seeped in a little bit where it wasn't too wet and powerful. Now I'm actually going to walk through and try and do a whole project from this book, which is the birdhouse. I have absolutely no drawing skills whatsoever, never have. It tells you just to sketch it out, but it actually does give you some ideas, so you could trace it if you want to, in a QR code if you wanted to even print it, but I just tried to sketch it. I figured it'd be more like me actually making a real birdhouse. It wouldn't look it wouldn't look perfect, but it would suit my garden and lifestyle, because that's my whole point of this website, is showing you what it's like just in real life. So here I actually did have the colors that it had asked in the book, and it told me just to paint the whole thing solidly one color first. My colors I found were much darker than the colors she was using in the book, especially this brown here. And as I went through the project, I found I really had to try to pick up a lot of it just to create more of the texture. And I just keep going back and forth and playing until I got something I was satisfied with, essentially. But if I was doing it again, I'd start with a little bit lighter colors right off the start, I think. Although I ended up with a product that I was happy with. Here I was supposed to be using brown, but because my birdhouse was so brown in the first place, I had to mix some black in with my brown. It looks just black here, honestly, but... And again, just playing around, trying to figure out what works, trying to make it look a little bit more like wood. Tried to add the shading like the book had suggested underneath the roof of the birdhouse. And I just keep playing around till I get something that I sort of like. I was surprised I couldn't see the pencil lines through. And here I picked up a little bit more of the paint and I started liking it a little bit better when it wasn't quite so dark. It's crooked on the bottom. That I think is funny. It would be like as if I really had made it. I'm going to show you at the end a sample of what it looks like compared to the one in the book. You'll see that mine is quite a bit darker. And I'm just trying to put a few finishing touches on till I get it to a place I like. Here I did start doing a blossom on the other side, but I needed to let it dry before I could add the details. So there you can see the two side by side. Like I said, mine's a little bit too dark. Thanks for watching, everybody.